welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you are new. My name is Hallie. I'm so happy that you're here, and welcome to my summer reading wrap-up. Today we are going to be talking about all the books that I read over the course of June, July, and August because I didn't do any individual monthly wrap-ups for those months because I was in a summer-long reading slump, and I just felt like at the end of the month I would have just talked about the very few books that I did read in like a recent video, and so doing a wrap-up at that point felt a little repetitive. But now that we're at the end of summer, I felt like it would be good to recap what reading I did do over the course of this summer before we go into the fall months and fall reading and fall TBRs and all of those things, if we just wrap up my summer reading nicely with a bow. So I'm going to go over my reads month by month, starting off with June. So starting with my June reading stats. In the month of June, I read 4 books, 2 romances, 1 fantasy, and 1 literary fiction. I read a total of 1,753 pages. The longest book that I read was 464 pages, and the shortest book that I read was 400 pages. My average rating was 3.88 stars, and out of the books that I read, 2 were from my original 2025 physical TBR and 2 were not. So those are kind of my stats for the month of June. Getting into the actual book reviews themselves, the first book that I will talk about is Notes on Infinity by Austen Taylor. This was an e-arc. Honestly, my rating for this was 2.75. I was a little bit disappointed by this read. I think because I was expecting something different. Essentially, it's like a academic, what is that called? Like where it's like literary fiction, but it's kind of like academic based. I don't know. It's essentially following these 2 people who kind of found a startup based on the fact that they have discovered a cure to aging. And I went into it expecting it was going to play a lot more into like the whole not aging thing and have like a whole plot around that and people not aging, but it went very differently than that. And I just felt like unsatisfied by the time I finished the book. It just felt like, okay, is that it? You know, I don't know. It kind of dragged on at points. It moved a little bit slowly. At first, I was really interested in it, obviously, because I was wondering where the plot was going to go, and I was excited to get to the plot point of the anti-aging thing. Yeah, so 2.75 stars, that was my rating. I probably would not reach for that one for a recommendation anytime soon, and I don't really ever think about that one, to be honest. So those are kind of my thoughts on Notes on Infinity. Not much to say. That's pretty much it. 2.75 stars. Next, I have Long Live Evil by Sarah Reese Brennan. This one I also rated 2.75 stars, which I'm so sad about. I honestly had such high expectations going into this book, and honestly, it started off pretty strong. Like I had quite a few tabs right in the first section of the book because there were some really, really beautiful quotes about like being a reader and being a lover of books that I really, really related to. Like this one right here says, Alice was a literary romantic, falling in love with the potential of every story she met. Reading a book was like meeting someone for the first time. You don't know if you will love them or hate them enough to learn every detail or skim the surface, never to know their depths. Which I just felt like that was such a beautiful interpretation of like the feeling of being a reader and being a lover of stories, you know what I'm saying? But it very quickly went downhill. If you don't know what this book is about, it's about a girl who is on the verge of death, and she ends up having the chance to enter the storyline of her favorite book series. Like basically enter the book, which I thought was such a cool premise. But what happens is once she enters the book, she, instead of like being the main character, she ends up being like on the villain's side, which I feel like is such an interesting premise for a book, because as a reader, whenever you imagine yourself like entering the books that you're reading about or entering your favorite book series, I feel like most of the time you're imagining yourself in the main character's shoes and not in the shoes of the antagonist. That premise, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so interesting. I had very high hopes for this. Honestly, I thought that this could be a 5-star. But my problem with this is that it's technically not a YA, but I read somewhere that the author, after the fact, because I was like, why are the vibes of this like so weird? So after I started reading this and I was feeling like the vibes are a little really, or just like the writing, I don't know, some things in the writing were just like really weird. I read that the author, even though it's not a YA, she still wanted it to kind of read like a YA, I guess, but in doing that, it's almost like she was trying too hard in her writing to give that like, I mean, I don't even know what feel it is, because I've read YAs that don't feel like this. Like, I don't know. It was just like the writing, some of the things that the characters would say or the jokes that they would say were just like straight up cringy. And I don't really cringe a lot at books, to be honest. I feel like I'm not really that tough of a critic. So the fact that I was reading things and I was like, I don't know, that's like a little bit cringy. That's saying something. That just really took me out of the story time and time again. And by the end of it, I solely just was finishing this book so I could figure out what happens in the plot, not because I necessarily was invested or really cared about the outcome of any of the characters. I needed to see it through and see what the ending was because I was so excited for this book. But by the time I finished it, I pretty much was like, yeah, I don't think that I'm going to be picking up the sequel to this anytime soon. I just was really disappointed by this one. So that's Long Live Evil by Sarah Reese Brennan. Unfortunately, a big letdown. After that, I have Powerless by Elsie Silver. Wow, 5 stars. Okay. This is a 5-star. This actually is my first 5-star in the Chestnut Springs series, which I'm so excited about. Honestly, I had a feeling going into this one that this was going to be my first 5-star in the Chestnut Springs series. Jasper, the man you are. I say this every single time that I talk about this book. Jasper's not for everybody, but he is for me. I love him. Your Honor. This is a friends to lovers romance. In the beginning of the book, we meet our female main character, Sloane, who is about to get married, and she's kind of like having second thoughts because the man that she's going to marry isn't obviously the best man, as in he's kind of a scumbag, and she ends up running away from her wedding. And who is there to save her on her wedding day when she's trying to escape a marriage that she realizes she doesn't want? None other than Jasper himself. And then they go on a road trip together, and that's where the magic happens. I don't know, that's basically my summary of this book. The tension between the two main characters is palpable. It's so good. Honestly, I used to think that I didn't like Friends to Lovers, but this year has kind of proven me wrong. But yes, highly recommend. This is so far my favorite book in the Chestnut Springs series. I'm really, really excited to read Reckless though, because that's a lot of people's favorite book in the series, so I'm very interested to see if that will be another 5-star or if that will kind of dethrone Powerless as my favorite in the series, or if this one will stay my favorite. So very excited to read the next one in the series. After that, the last book that I have for the month of June is Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. This was another 5-star. This book was so unique, I feel like, because it almost felt like, I don't want to say historical fiction, but it was like a then now perspective. If you don't know what this book is about, it's about 2 writers who are vying for the chance to write the biography of a woman who used to be in the spotlight, very, very famous. She married a super famous musician, basically, who was like rivaling Elvis at the time, I'm pretty sure. But their marriage ended in tragedy, and years and years and years ago, she kind of stepped out from the spotlight and disappeared. And so now she's much older and she's decided to write a biography about her life. So that's like a huge chance for whoever gets the chance to write the biography. It'll be like a career defining book, basically. So our 2 main characters obviously are the 2 writers who are kind of in a rivalry, so you get to see their interactions being work rivals but also kind of forming a little friendship along the way. And then you also get to see glimpses and pieces of Margaret's old life as she's telling them the stories through interviews. And I just loved every single part of this book, to be honest. It was, I don't even want to say it was slow paced, because it just felt like the perfect pacing. Like, it wasn't like a super fast paced, intense, crazy things are happening plot by any means, but it was honestly perfect for me. I absolutely loved the kind of relationship between our 2 main characters as they slowly find things out about each other and kind of let their guard down with each other, because they are rivals, so they kind of like do have that wall up, because it's like, okay, you're my competition and I can't get too close to you because we're literally pitted against each other. So that was just, seeing them slowly unravel each other was so beautiful, and how everything tied together at the end with Margaret and her life and the 2 writers. I just thought it was so well done, so beautiful. Yet another 5-star for Emily Henry, honestly. I think there's only one of her books that I've read so far that haven't been 5-star. It was People We Meet on Vacation. But every other Emily Henry book that I've read has been 5 stars. I just love her writing style and the way that she tells stories and the way that her characters interact. It's just so good. And also, I don't know why, like, I've seen reviews of people saying that like this doesn't have hardly any romance. Did we read the same book? Because the romance in this book was so good. It's just you also have a side plot of a whole different character. So I guess if you don't want that and you only want the relationship between the main characters, yeah, maybe you'd be disappointed. But like, I love every single character in this book. It was so good. Honestly, I would love to reread this one day. That and Funny Story, Happy Place, I want to reread. All of my 5 stars, basically. So those are the 4 books that I read in June. Moving on to July with my July reading stats. In July, July, I read 3 books. They were all fantasies. I read a total of 1,486 pages. The longest book that I read was 528 pages, and the shortest book that I read was 478 pages. My average rating was 4.16 stars, and out of the 3 books that I read, all 3 were from my 2025 physical TBR. So honestly, that's the best month I've had so far. 100% off my physical TBR. That's honestly what I should have been aiming for every other month this year, but I digress. So the first book that I have to talk about for the month of July is Finale by Stephanie Garber. I rated this one 3.75 stars. This was good. Like, it was good. Honestly, for the Caraval trilogy as a whole, I feel like I am glad that I read it. Well, I guess I don't know yet because I haven't read Once Upon a Broken Heart yet, and the whole reason that I read the Caraval trilogy was because when I was talking about reading Once Upon a Broken Heart, everyone was saying it's not necessary to read the Caraval trilogy before Once Upon a Broken Heart, but you do get introduced to one of the main characters that's in Once Upon a Broken Heart in this book first, so you get a tiny bit of backstory before that story. So I wanted to go into Once Upon a Broken Heart having all of the possible information that I could have, so that's originally why I picked up this trilogy. My favorite book in the trilogy definitely still is the second one, Legendary. I feel like that one, for me, the plot took me the most by surprise, and I liked the way that it was written and the plot overall the most, honestly, in the whole series. At the beginning of this book, the premise of it did feel a little bit like almost repetitive. Like, we just got out of one scenario in the last book and it felt like we were setting up a very similar type of scenario, so I kind of lost a little bit of interest when first starting this book because I was like, I feel like we're kind of just going in a circle at this point. And it did wrap up nicely at the end, honestly. I'm very, very intrigued though to see how the character from this book plays a role in Once Upon a Broken Heart. That's what I will say. After finishing this book, my interest is fully piqued to see kind of what the character is getting up to in the next series, and especially based off of his backstory. Like, I don't really understand how he could then turn into a main character in another series, so I'm very, very intrigued to see that character in Once Upon a Broken Heart. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on Finale by Stephanie Garber. Definitely not my favorite in the trilogy, but it was a decent read, and overall I think I am glad that I decided to read the trilogy before going into Once Upon a Broken Heart. Obviously, I'll have to update you guys after I read Once Upon a Broken Heart and see if I really think it added that much of a benefit reading it, but that's at least my opinion for now. The next book that I have is Dance of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson. This was another 5-star. I am actually so glad that I finally ended up reading this book. This has been on my TBR, I think, like since I very first got into reading. This was like one of the first fantasy books that I bought. This was so good. This is a YA enemies to lovers romantasy. In this book, you're basically following our 2 main characters who are from like rivaling kingdoms, and our female main character is sent from one kingdom to kind of be a spy and try and find out some secrets from the other kingdom, and she ends up being kidnapped alongside our male main character from the other kingdom. And once that happens, you're kind of set off on a little bit of a adventure, and that's kind of where the plot picks up, I guess. That's all I'll say about this one, but this was just so good. I loved the world and the setting of this book. I really, really like Mary E. Pearson's writing style as well, and the romance in this book was just so good. It was so good. I literally just like inhaled this book. It was just so enjoyable, honestly. I'm really, really excited to read the second book. When I finished this book, I ended up reading the first like 2 chapters of the second book, and I'm very intrigued to see like where the plot is gonna go in the second book. I believe this is just a duology as well, so it's just the first and the second book, so I'll get like a nice little conclusion after reading the second book, but highly recommend. It was a very, very easy read. I remember whenever I started this one, I was very intimidated by it because the cover just felt like it was giving, this is a serious book and you need a big brain, I guess, which is such a silly thing to say, especially now having read the book, but it definitely was not intimidating at all. It definitely was not hard to get into, hard to follow along with, not confusing at all. It just was pure enjoyment. Like, it was so, so good. I highly recommend Dance of Thieves for sure. And then the last book that I have for the month of July is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. Me and Six of Crows have been through it. I had been trying to read this book for like over a year. I guess not trying, but like I kept putting it on TBRs month after month after month, and I would just never pick it up because it was intimidating to me. And honestly, I don't know if that plays a part into my rating. My final rating for this book was 3.75 stars. I did end up feeling almost like a little bit disappointed by this book, or I guess just disappointed that I didn't end up liking it as much as I anticipated or as much as everyone else seems to like it, especially after having it on my TBR for so long and like kind of having it in my sights for so long. It just felt so disappointing to finally definitely get to the point of reading the book and then feel a little bit like, I don't know. I have such a hard time talking about this book because I can fully see why so many people love this book. I just think that it's not my favorite. It was okay. It was good. It was entertaining. The characters were likable. I really did like getting the story through so many different viewpoints. I think that that's one thing that did kind of bump the rating up for this for me, because I felt like you really got to know all the characters individually through their own lens instead of just like hearing about the characters. You literally got to see through the eyes of all the characters. And my favorite part about this book was 100% the heist at the very end. That part, honestly, if I was rating that part as a whole, that would probably be a 4 or a 4.5. It's just because it took me so long to get into the book, and the whole part kind of leading up to the main event, the heist, was a lot slower for me. I think that that's what overall brought the rating down. But the heist itself and the ending of the book were much better in my opinion than like the lead up to get there. So if the whole book would have been on that vibe, I think I would have enjoyed it quite a bit more. I just didn't enjoy the journey of getting there as much as the heist itself, if that makes sense. So those are the 3 books that I read in July. Moving on to August with my August stats. In August, I read 4 books. I read 1 fantasy and 3 romances. I read a total of 1,517 pages. The longest book that I read was 544 pages, and the shortest book that I read was 61 pages. So for the month of August, all of the books that I read were arcs. I didn't do very much reading, honestly, over the course of this whole summer, but what's a girl to do? I definitely am going to go out and buy a few of these physically to have them on my shelf. But starting off with our first read, we have Love and Other Killers by Brynne Weaver. This is a little novella that comes after the events of Butcher and Blackbird, Leather and Lark, and Scythe and Sparrow. This one, it was short and sweet. It was honestly exactly what you would expect from a novella coming after that trilogy and having all those characters all in one. I will say that it was really fun to get more interactions of all of the characters in a group setting, because throughout the trilogy you get like a couple of scenes here and there where each of the characters from the other books will kind of pop in and you get little group moments, but I did really enjoy having an entire story centered around the group as a whole. It also did kind of pique my interest for the next series that she's about to start. I forget what it's called. The character is never like named or like shown on screen or like on page, I guess, but I'm assuming that that is going to end up being one of the main characters from the new series that she's coming out with. That definitely did pique my interest as to what the next series is going to be about and who that main character will be, because you're kind of just like teased with the information throughout the novella, and also at the end of Scythe and Sparrow you get like a little bit of a tease, so very interested in that. But my overall rating for this little novella was 3 stars, so it was good. It was quick, easy, super short, honestly, and exactly what I expected from the novella. So the next book that I have is Wild Reverence by Rebecca Ross. This is a 6-star read for me. This was so good. If you don't know what this book is about, it takes place well before the events of Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows, and you're following the gods from that story, and it was just so good. Honestly, this is like a contender for one of my top books of 2025, to be honest. I have not stopped thinking about it since I stopped reading it. I did in fact order a special edition for it. It's so beautiful, so cute. It's gonna look so cute on my shelf, and I need a shrine immediately because this is definitely so far my favorite Rebecca Ross book. The writing in this book was just so immersive and whimsical, and the romance was like so tragically beautiful because obviously you're following a story between a god and a mortal, so like it was doomed to begin with, but it's so beautiful. It was so beautifully written. I loved the like settings that we got in this book, because obviously since we're following a goddess as one of our main characters, we get to see all of the different realms. So we got to see where the skyward gods live, we got to see where the underling gods live, we got to introduce to so many of the different gods as well in both of the realms. And our main character, like one of her powers is she's able to like walk between realms, so just getting to see how the magic worked in her like traveling through the realms and all the different gods and their different powers, like it was just so interesting and so well written, so good. I literally wish that she was going to come out with more books following their story, but I feel like it did tie up pretty nicely. I'm pretty sure that this is a standalone, so there's not going to be any more, but I literally wish. I hope that in the future she ends up coming out with more books following some of the different gods and their stories, because I would absolutely absolutely eat that up 100%. This was just, it was so good. I highly recommend you pick it up, especially if you loved Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows. Honestly, after reading it, if you haven't read Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows, you absolutely could read it on its own. I think it's better to read Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows beforehand because in Wild Reverence, you do get to meet gods that you were introduced to in that book. So I think it was kind of cool to like meet gods where you've seen in the future and kind of see how things play out. But I will say, I feel like if you have been maybe thinking about starting Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows, but you haven't felt too interested, maybe you could pick up Wild Reverence first and it would kind of make you more interested in Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows if you weren't like wanting to have to read both of those to get to this book. I think you definitely could do that, but I personally would recommend that you read Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows first to get like the full scope of the story, and also it just makes the little epilogue at the end like that much more meaningful. It was just so good. I need everyone to go and pick up this book immediately. The next book that we have is a little romance book called Sweet Heat by Balu Babalola. This is my first book by this author. This is a second chance romance. I ended up rating this one 3.75 stars. It wasn't my favorite, and I think maybe I went into it with like too high of expectations. I don't know, it started off so strong. Like the first 20% of the book, I was 100% sure that it was going to be a 5-star read. I honestly thought it could be one of my new favorite romance books, but then from like 20% to like 85%, it felt like the plot diverged from like the banter between the two main characters and them communicating about kind of what happened and kind of reconnecting, and it changed from that to like different things going on in the plot. And then at the very end of the book, it felt like they kind of came back and we got to see more of their communication, and that was when they were kind of able to like repair their relationship and everything like that. But for me personally, I feel like the reason I love second chance romance is for all of the deep conversations and for all of like the forgiving that two main characters have to do in order to like repair the situation. And there's something about that feels so deeply emotional that I really like about second chance romance. Like it forces them to have like real life deep conversations, and it feels so deep and moving and believable and emotional, and I just feel like that's what I was kind of lacking in the story for it to be a higher rating. I really liked the banter between the characters and the romance, and the author's writing style was very beautiful. I loved all the cultural references and the music references and the fashion references. Like there was so much that I loved about this book, but for me it was just lacking some of that emotional depth that I personally really crave in romance books, and especially in second chance romance books. I know after I posted that video, a lot of you guys were saying I really need to read the book that comes before that, so I'm very interested to read that one and see if it kind of changes my opinion on Sweet Heat. I think I definitely will pick it up just so I can see like what was I missing going into Sweet Heat, but for now those are kind of my thoughts on Sweet Heat. And then the last book that I read in August is The Best Worst Thing by Lauren Oakey, and this book honestly took me by surprise. My final rating for this one was 4.5 stars. I was so surprised by this. Like I really was expecting it to be like just a good like 3-star entertaining but not deeply moving book to be completely honest. The premise of this book is absolutely insane. I mean, it's not insane, it's just like giving oh my god because you're essentially following our main character who has been married to her husband for 10 years, and over the course of the last 10 years they have been trying to conceive and they have been met with a lot of infertility issues. She eventually goes on to start a podcast talking about her infertility issues just so that if there's other women who are going through the same thing, they can be seen, and it can be kind of a place for them to come together and almost like bond over the hardship that is infertility, because that's such a hard thing to go through. And basically what happens is at the beginning of this book, you see our main character and her husband going through infertility, and 2 years prior they decided that their holy grail, their last try for having a baby, is going to be getting a surrogate. And so far they have done 2 egg transfers that have not taken, and they're on their very last egg transfer, and they're basically like, after this we're done trying. Like if it doesn't work, it's not gonna happen. She goes out of town to be with her surrogate during the egg transfer. The husband can't make it because he's busy with work, and when she gets back from that trip, she walks into the house and catches her husband cheating on her with her dog walker. Disgusting, I know. So she leaves him, as she absolutely should. After she leaves her husband, a few weeks pass and she gets a very excited call from her surrogate informing her that she is now pregnant. I know. Hence the title, The Best Worst thing. And it all makes sense because what? You've got to be kidding me. That's kind of the premise for the book, and alongside the issues that she's going through with divorcing her husband and him cheating on her and also her surrogate being pregnant through all of this, she eventually reconnects with an old work colleague who she kind of always had underlying feelings of like, I really like this person, they're super funny, we have great chemistry, like he's really cute, and there was always some sort of energy there, but nothing ever happened from it because obviously she was married. But they end up running into each other and kind of rekindling an old flame, so you get that on the side as well. And my whole thing with this book was like, I really didn't think that I would be able to root for our main character kind of developing a new relationship while still going through actively like a divorce and a surrogacy pregnancy on the side. Like, I just didn't think that I would be able to fully like root for her doing that while she's going through, because I'm just like, maybe you need to like take some time to just cope with everything that's going on because there's so much going on. And I just felt like I wouldn't be able to fully root for their relationship because how could she be fully emotionally available and ready to start a new relationship while her old one is still falling apart and there's still so much going on with that one. But that was 100% not the case. Like, the way that everything was written and the way that the plot played out was just so well done, in my opinion. It was such a quick and easy read as well. Even though the topic matter I feel like feels very heavy and serious, it's like, how could you have a funny rom-com based on this? I don't know, it was just so well done. It was just so well done. It was funny, the romance was perfect. Towards the end of the book, like the way that it ended, I literally was like tearing up because I was just like, oh my god, like it's over already. This was so good. It was just such a good story. So I highly recommend you check that out. I'm pretty sure that this book is her debut novel, which I feel like it was so well done. Like, I really am still like so surprised that I liked it as much as I did, but I would definitely 100% recommend that book. So that brings me to the end of today's video, the end of my summer reading wrap up. That's all the books that I read this summer. It was an okay summer of reading. I just need to accept that I'm pretty sure every single summer I'm going to enter a little bit of a reading slump and life slump just because I hate the summer, and that's okay because at the end of summer comes fall, and fall and winter are truly where I thrive. So I'm so excited to be going into the fall and winter season. I can't wait to talk about some of the cozy fall reads that I'm so excited to get into this fall. So if you're interested in watching that, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already so that you don't miss future videos coming out from me. But as far as this video goes, that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!